Imagine this, a huge, multi-billion-dollar federal program, one that actually passed with support from both parties, suddenly just hits a brick wall. Today, we're digging into the story of the Digital Equity Act and how it got to this point.
And it all kicks off with this, a really dramatic statement from President Donald Trump, posted on his Truth Social platform. He called a major government program an illegal giveaway. And that one statement, well, it set off a massive political and legal firestorm. And then, boom, just one day after that post, the administration announced it was planning to end the Digital Equity Act programs. You know, this wasn't just some vague threat. It was a very direct move to stop the money from flowing to projects all across the country. So that leaves us with two really big questions, right? First, what was this program even supposed to do in the first place? And second, how did something that started as a bipartisan effort end up at the center of such a huge fight? Let's get into it. To really get what's going on here, we have to rewind a little bit, because the act itself was created to solve a very real, everyday problem for millions of Americans. And that problem has a name: the digital divide. It's a pretty simple concept, really, but it has these massive consequences. It's just the gap between people who can easily get online and use technology and, well, those who can't. Congress decided to go big to fix this. Back in 2021, as part of a much larger infrastructure bill, it approved a whopping $275 billion for the Digital Equity Act. The whole idea was to fund projects that would directly help close that gap. And here's a really key term in the law that you've got to know: covered populations. See, the act was super specific about who this money was actually for. It wasn't just a free-for-all. It was targeted to make sure the help got to the people who needed it the most. So who are we talking about? Well, this list of covered populations is pretty broad. It includes seniors over 60, our veterans, folks living in rural areas, low-income households, and people with disabilities. The goal was to overcome the specific hurdles these groups face when trying to get online. And this wasn't just some abstract policy. The money was for really practical, on-the-ground things. Stuff like job training programs, getting low-cost laptops to people, keeping computer centers open in libraries, and just teaching basic digital skills. Okay, so that's the policy on paper. But what did this actually look like for real people in real communities? This is where the story moves from Washington, D.C., out into the rest of America. For example, let's go to rural Iowa. A program there used this funding to get laptops into the hands of families who just couldn't afford them. All of a sudden, kids could do their homework online, and parents could access essential services. Or how about this story from Oregon? A nonprofit was running keyboard basics classes for seniors. For a lot of them, it was really their first time ever using a computer. One person said it just made him feel more confident, less dependent on his kids and grandkids for help. And the program was also designed for disaster recovery. In Western North Carolina, after Hurricane Helene basically washed away computers and knocked out connectivity, these funds were approved to help get those communities back on their feet. And this quote from Angela Seifer of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, wow, it just perfectly sums up the stakes. As she put it, having internet and knowing how to use it is no longer a luxury. It's absolutely essential just to survive in today's world. Okay, so you hear all these stories, and you have to wonder, if the program was having this kind of impact, how on earth did it become so controversial? Let's trace how this thing went from a bipartisan bill to a political flashpoint. This timeline really tells the whole story. It starts out great in 2021, passing with support from both Democrats and Republicans. But by late 2024, you can feel the political winds changing. Senator Ted Cruz sends a letter to the agency in charge saying the program is unconstitutional. And then, just a few months after that, President Trump makes his move. And this gets right to the heart of the disagreement. On one side, you have the actual text of the law, which lists all those covered populations, including racial and ethnic minorities, right alongside veterans and rural residents. On the other side, you have the administration's criticism, which really zeroed in on that one aspect, with the president calling the grants woke handouts based on race. You know, it's an interesting move because it really highlights a specific view on tech policy. And it kind of contrasts with actions in other areas, like the administration's more pro-growth, hands-off approach to things like supporting the U.S. crypto industry. So the president has declared the program is over. But can he actually do that? Is it really that simple? This whole thing opens up a huge question about the separation of powers, and it leaves the future of billions of dollars totally up in the air. I mean, this is the million-dollar question now, isn't it? Congress is the one that approved and funded this program, so can the executive branch just turn around and decide not to spend the money? Well, as it turns out, there's a law for this exact situation. It's called the Impoundment Control Act, and it was passed way back in 1974. It was created for the specific purpose of preventing a president from refusing to spend money that Congress has already set aside, and it lays out a very clear process. According to that law, there are really only two ways this can go. Path number one, the president can officially ask Congress to rescind or cancel the funding. Congress then gets 45 days to vote on it. If they say no or do nothing, the money has to be spent. Path number two, the administration could try to just stop the funds on its own through executive action. But legal experts are saying that would almost certainly trigger a major court battle. And while all that legal and political drama plays out, the impact on the ground is happening right now. Organizations that were already approved for grants, they're completely in limbo. State-level plans are, as one organizer put it, just stuck. And the nonprofits are now scrambling, having to go out and beg for money just to keep their essential services running. Which leaves us with this huge final question just hanging in the air. This whole thing started as a bipartisan effort to solve a problem that affects all kinds of Americans. Now that its future is tangled up in a political and legal fight, what happens to that shared goal of finally closing America's digital divide?